Okay. Hello everyone. My name's Ophelie, and I'm here with Milana and Alexandra. And thank you so much all for being here on this kind of sunny summer evening. And it's also the full moon, which is a nice coincidence. I might speak to some people here, but not to everyone, but it's always nice energetically. Before we start, I wanted to do a very short meditation, very, very short, I promise. We'll just take a deep breath together, but if you're happy to, we can all close our eyes. And just, if you can, or if you can just feel your breath, but just feel into your heart, and you can feel your heartbeat, or just feel like a light around your heart, and just feel your breath coming in and out at the same time. And then we can just all take a deep breath in, and as you take a deep breath in, maybe feel the light getting stronger, or feel like a smile in your heart, or whatever resonates with you. So if we will take a deep breath in through our noses, and then exhale through our mouth. Thank you. I wanted to have this talk and invite Milana and Alexandra because a lot of people have asked me to do a talk on this, to organize a talk on this, and a lot of people around me have been talking about plant medicine and taking mushrooms recreationally. It's definitely a big thing at the moment. So I think it's always an interesting topic to talk about. But also the underlying themes behind all the ideas of the Spheres talks is the idea of wholeness. So Jung called it individuation, so it's the idea of coming back to yourself, knowing yourself better, knowing your body and your soul better, and coming back to sort of your true self. And plant medicine is really part of that journey, so I thought it was such a nice topic to add to the roster. And I think as well, so many people don't realise that plant medicine, in whatever form, because we'll talk about it more, but don't realise the benefits that it has and how they can help you come back into yourself. And so that's why I've invited Alexandra and Milana to talk more about their experiences, and also just about plants as medicine, whether it's socially or environmentally, physically, mentally, emotionally. There are so many different aspects. And plant medicine and focusing on it in general, but we also want to explore more the work around it, so the intention and the integration, because often with plant medicine you can have amazing things that happen to you, you can have an amazing experience, but when we've been talking about this together, and what we want to pass across is the idea that it's actually a long-term work, and you can be given such a beautiful experience and a beautiful message, but it's really how you integrate that into your life that the work really becomes really, truly beautiful. So, yeah, just so that you know, it's not just about mushrooms as well. And this will be, so as I said, it's really going to be an introductory talk, so we're going to touch on lots of different topics, so if anything resonates with you, please do come talk to us at the end, and we all have a Q&A as well. And plant medicine is a super wide topic. So it can be about herbs, it can be about psychedelics, and I think the definition of plant medicine is literally any plant that has a therapeutic effect on a body, on a human or animal body, but we are going to focus more on psychedelics during this talk. So yeah, but again, we will have a Q&A at the end, so we'll see what's interested everyone more. And I wanted to ask you all some questions first, which I always like to do. And so if you could just raise your hand if you feel deeply connected to nature. Okay, nice. And do you feel deeply connected to others? If you raise your hand. Okay, and raise your hand if you feel deeply connected to yourself. Okay, nice. That's good. And can you raise your hand if you're comfortable, if you've ever taken psychedelics? And if you've taken them at parties or recreationally. Okay. And if you've ever taken them during a ceremony. Okay. And when you've taken psychedelics, do you feel more connected to yourself than you do usually? You raise your hand. Okay. Sometimes, okay. And do you feel more connected to others when you take psychedelics? Okay. And more connected to nature? Okay. Interesting. Thank you. So now we're going to talk for about 45 minutes and then we'll have a Q&A at the end. So my first question is for you, Milana. So I'm super happy that you're here, super grateful because you live in Mexico, and when you started your platform, so you have a psychedelics focused educational platform and directory called Funga, which is really amazing. And you launched it in, I think, September last year, and the first day you launched it, I was like, Milana, you have to come and talk. So I'm really happy that you're here and that we made this happen. Would you be happy to tell us what plant medicine means to you and your own experience?
Hi guys. Thank you so much for having me. It's a great honor to be part of a project like this. It's really important to have these conversations and to bring people together that have similar interests. So yeah, I'm gonna tell you about the first very impactful psychedelic experience that I had, because that really started the whole journey for me. So I was traveling in Indonesia with a friend of mine, and we flew to this island called Sumba, and at the time there was nothing on the island except for beautiful natural phenomena. And on the last day we went to this incredible lagoon, and it was literally like discovering the second coming of the beach, like the most beautiful place I'd ever been to. And Nicolo gave me half of this chocolate mushroom that he had smuggled in from Burning Man, so left over. A combination of psilocybin and DMT, so very strong. And he gave me a very, very big chunk. I ate it all, and instantly I started feeling very weird vibes coming from him. And I said to him, I said, please, Nicolo, don't speak to me for the rest of the day. And he's such a sweethearted but weirdo, and I knew that he would understand that and not be offended. So for the first 2 hours I was sitting like a total amateur on a rock inside of the lagoon with my hands on my eyes, just trying to center myself because there was just too much stimulation happening around. And after about 2 hours I came a little bit more back to myself, and I was able to walk. And I went up over these rocks. I had the ocean on one side, the lagoon on the other. And it's always difficult to talk about psychedelics. I think that's kind of a common theme. Like, we don't have the words to quite describe what it is that we're experiencing. And I also think sometimes it can be a little bit boring, like when you recall a dream. But I will say that when I took these mushrooms and when I take other plant medicines, it strips you away from your identity. And I truly feel like you go to the core of who you really are. And it's a great starting point to think about who you want to be in the future. Not that it makes you be that person, but it allows you to see it. It's a window into what's possible. And I always say it was like a moment with God, whatever your definition of God is. And truly it was a before and after in my life. Never in a million years did I think that I would work with psychedelics, but life is funny that way. And 3 years later, I moved to Mexico City and I started my platform. And I always like to say that I'm not an authority figure on this topic, but I'm someone that's been deeply impacted by plant medicine. And not that I think it's for everyone, but I think it can help so many other people. And I want to be part in breaking barriers and furthering the conversation, because, you know, nature has so much innate knowledge and the power to cure us, and that was the original medicine. So that's what it means to me today.
Thank you, Milana. Thank you so much for sharing that. I think it's amazing as well that you had such a strong experience but have also used that experience to share with others and to really pass along what you learned. So thank you so much for sharing with us. Alexandra, you're a guest speaker at our first event, so I'm super happy to have you back. Thank you for being here. And you're a herbalist and yoga teacher, but you've also been on your own journey with psychedelics and plant medicine in general, and I guess herbalism is part of plant medicine too. Would you be happy to share with how it came into your life in general and why you felt moved, I guess, to speak today?
Yes. I think I've always in my life had a very strong affinity towards natural ways of living and different healing modalities. Me and Toffee were talking about this at the beginning. We weren't sure if we were going to mention it or not, but I'm also on the first day of my period. That might mean not much to people here. And to the people who are at the last talk, you might know what I mean. And I sometimes lose my words on my first day, so just bear with me.
It's real. It's always real.
Milana with the moon. So with herbal medicine and with different healing modalities, they were definitely like a way. Yeah, it's definitely something that lights up my soul. I think growing up, I always found it very difficult fitting in with the direction that I felt I was being, and all of us were being, like the system that we were being prepared for. I found school quite a difficult system to be within, and the end goal that it was leading us towards, I also found didn't really align fully with all of my values and didn't make me feel joyful. And I think having purpose and a direction and also contributing to society and to the whole in a meaningful way is so important. But for me, there were so many other things around, just being a productive member of society that I felt really nourished me and lit me up. And that's when I started to become really interested in different healing modalities and really followed my path with yoga and all these other things that have a lot to do with integration that I'll talk about later on. And I definitely felt a very strong calling towards herbs and the natural world. I grew up in the hills in Scotland, and I always knew that's what made me feel free and whole, being close to nature. And I always sought a more direct way to be in direct communication with nature and connection, and that's what drew me towards herbs and herbal medicine, which is something that I studied. And then when it came to psychedelics, that was just something that a lot of us come across at parties and things like that. And so when I started taking psychedelics, it would always be in social situations, and I was saying to Hannah earlier, I often found that quite a difficult thing, because my experience with psychedelics was always very intense, and I think doing them in social situations sometimes is also very useful, and you can learn a lot about yourself in that scenario, and that challenges you. And I think that's a wonderful thing about psychedelics, is that they challenge us to be, to widen our horizons around who we are. Then I've definitely felt more drawn to taking them in ceremonial and intentional spaces, because that's a bit easier to navigate the intense experiences that I would encounter. And plant medicine, psychedelic or not, has always been such a great teacher for me. And so that is where my interest lies. And then it was so funny when Ophelie asked me to do this talk, because I was I've been given an invitation to take part in an ayahuasca ceremony, which I had never done before until 2 weeks ago. And I was sort of like thinking that I would get myself there by saying, I don't have to do it, I'm probably not going to do it, but I'm just going to carry on like preparing and doing all the stuff you have to do to lead up to it, but I'm probably not going to do it. And then Ophelie called me up and asked me to do this talk, and then I was like, oh shit, that's great, that's such a weird coincidence, I'm definitely going to do it. So right now I'm in an integration process from that, and so it's cool to share all of that with you.
Thank you, Alex. Thanks for sharing that. I think it's quite cool how, I guess, we're all on our journeys I guess what I was talking about, sort of coming back to ourselves and all towards wholeness. And it's funny that Milana, yours was catapulted by plant medicine in a way, if I can say that, and us, it was different things that led us to that, but that we still integrated it during the journey. So it does all fit in together. So I always find that quite fascinating. Milana, I wanted to ask you as well if you are happy to give us a brief history. No, this is such a huge thing to talk about, and I know we won't do it justice here, but if you're happy just to, because obviously that's something that you know about and are interested in, so if you're happy just to talk more about psychedelics as well, and just their history and maybe their benefits, just whatever you feel happy to mention.
Okay, good guys. I won't bore you too much because it's obviously a big question with a long answer. But the most important points are that plant medicine has been used for thousands of years, and the intentional use of psychedelics has also been going on for thousands of years. Humans have always wanted to connect with each other, with themselves, and with the divine. And I'm going to do it like this. So there's a guy called Paul Austin. He's also got a psychedelic platform called The Third Wave. And he basically talks about 3 waves in history where psychedelics were used a lot. The first one was ancient use of psychedelics, which really originated in Mexico with peyote, in the Amazon with ayahuasca. Then you had in the East a substance called soma, which nobody really knows what it was, but it was a psychedelic substance. And Gordon Wasson, who I'm going to talk about in a second, he proposes that it was the fly agaric mushroom, the emoji mushroom, the famous one. And he wrote a book called The Divine Mushroom of Immortality, sorry, if you want to read about soma. And then in ancient Greece you had kykeon, which I find very interesting, which was made from ergot, which is a fungus. And apparently Aristotle and Plato used to partake in these psychedelic sacraments. So they say that a lot of the basis of Western philosophy comes from psychedelic sacraments. And then with when the Roman Empire made Christianity their main religion, they had to cancel they forbade all psychedelic sacraments. So that was the end of the first wave. Then we had the counterculture, the second wave, which was in the 50s and the 60s. And that was catalyzed by 2 main events. You had Albert Hofmann, who synthesized LSD in 1943. And he saw a huge potential for psychiatry. And he sent out, with his pharmaceutical company Sandoz, LSD to many different research institutes. And then you had Robert Gordon Wasson, who went to Mexico. And he took mushrooms with probably the most famous curandera of all time, Maria Sabina. And he wrote an account of that in Time magazine in 1957, and there was an article called Seeking the Magic Mushroom, and that really, the word spread like wildfire, and everybody wanted to try and have this crazy experience. And it has to be said that so many people after they read this article, traveled to Mexico to find this curandera, and they actually ruined the village in a sense, and the villagers burnt her house down and they shunned her out of the village because it was attracting too many hippies. And at the time, you know, you had the Vietnam War, and a lot of people were not wanting to go to fight. It was all about peace and love, and the Woodstock generation. And Richard Nixon clamped down on these substances by declaring the war on drugs in 1971, and he made all plants Schedule 1 drugs, the same as heroin and cocaine. And that really ended all research. So that was the end of the second wave. And then the third wave, sorry, bear with me, the resurgence started again like the early 2000s. You had a bunch of psychiatrists that came together in Esalen, and trials into psychedelics started up again. And then with Michael Pollan's book, How to Change Your Mind, I don't know how many of you have read it, but I think that really helped in spreading the word and the message around psychedelics. And then you've got a bunch of universities, NYU, Johns Hopkins, Imperial, that all started doing trials as well. So that's where we currently are. We've got a bunch of for-profit and non-profit companies that are putting a lot of money into making these substances more widely available. And yeah, a few states have decriminalized psilocybin. Oregon has made it legal. Australia is the first country in the world, continent in the world, to make it MDMA and psilocybin legal for therapeutic use. And yeah, I mean, let's hope that it's going to keep going that way.
It's so interesting. Thank you. That was.
No, sorry, that was really long.
No, that was honestly the best.
But I also sorry. Just to say, because this is really important, like what they do. Instead of covering up symptoms like a lot of pharmaceuticals do, psychedelics go to the root of what's actually causing pain, and that's really important. And they have an ability to create new neural pathways and connectivity in the brain, because a symptom of depression is one symptom is being stuck in repetitive negative thought loops. And with psychedelics, you're able to deconstruct these thought patterns and kind of approach it from a new perspective, basically. And they also quiet the default mode network, which is a region in the brain that's very centered on the self. So they quiet down the ego, which is another very important place to kind of reconstruct yourself. And obviously, we all know they create, you know, connectivity with yourself, with the world, and with the divine. And the benefit of that is there are no words, right? So yeah, that's the end of it.
Thank you so much. That was really beautiful. Thank you. Well, I actually want to ask, just continuing on what you said about the third wave and how during the second wave was shut down, because I guess in part it went out into popular culture, and then people at Woodstock were using it, and then at the same time they were against the Vietnam War, so politically it wasn't a good thing for the government to allow people to keep taking plant medicine. And so I guess, and I remember reading, I can't remember who it was, but I think maybe it was Paul Stamets or someone, one of the big mycologists, who's definitely making it cool again. And he was saying that there was a fear that if it goes outside the labs again, which obviously it has because everyone's taking mushrooms, why is it so important? And I guess that's fine, but why is it so important that we have ceremonies, and I guess that we really understand the power of psychedelics, or plant medicine psychedelics, I mean, and why do we need to have ceremonies?
Okay, so do you want me to answer the question before Alex? Yeah? Okay. I've been thinking a lot about this recently, because when I started Funga, I became much more intentional about the way that I took psychedelics. Before, it was much more recreational. However, I do think that there's also potential and positive outcomes to sometimes take it in a recreational framework. So taking mushrooms, going out to have a good dance and laughing with friends, I think does tremendous things for the soul, but the key is, like with everything, moderation. So I just want to add that, and probably it'll change again, but I go through this wave of being more serious, thinking it needs to be more ceremonial, and then also seeing the value in doing it in different ways. Ceremony, it's a bit of a tricky word for me. I think a problem with psychedelics is that sometimes the language separates people that are into this thing from other people. And words like ceremony, language creates culture, it adds to that divide. And so that's also a point with Funga where I'm trying to neutralize the language a little bit and make it as inclusive for every type of person, really. But more than ceremony, I think intention is something that I want to talk about, because it's Timothy Leary in the 60s, he was talking about set and setting, and these are the two most important things when going into any psychedelic experience. So set is your mindset, and setting is the environment that you're doing it in. And those two things need to be right. And when we're talking about set and the mindset, I think it's really, really important to have intentions going into an experience, because they are your North Star. And it's also important not to have expectations with these intentions, because if they don't happen, you'll come out feeling disappointed, and that's obviously not good. But it's important to have some intentions that can pull you back and ground you when you're feeling a bit unsettled, or your mind takes you into places where you maybe don't want to go. It's a bit too confrontational. And there was something else I wanted to say about it. This is the most important part. The plants will take you where you need to go anyway. Like, you have no power. Once you're in it, you're in it. And so it's good not to have expectation, but the intention should be there, and that's going to help you navigate a little bit. But in the end, you're going to have the experience that you were meant to have all along. So,
thank you.
I had something to add. But yeah, I think it's I love what you said about having an intention to pull you back to yourself throughout the experience. And I think it's just so important to remember when you enter into one of these experiences, ceremonies, intentional spaces, whatever you want to call it, to have a great North Star is just to remind yourself why you want to, what is it within yourself, what are the patterns within yourself, or in what ways you want to grow. Because, for me, I think an important thing to remember is that it is literally all coming from within your mind, and it's an incredible, taking psychedelics is literally like the alchemy between you and nature, you and a plant. But it's really important to remember that the experience is not just from something external, and in a way you're not 100% powerless. You have to be so respectful to whichever medicine it is that you're taking, and knowing that it is showing you whatever it wants to show you. But it's also a wonderful thing, I think, that psychedelics show us is it's very concentrated. A very concentrated, what the word is, field maybe of showing you directly how our perception is shaping how we experience and interact with the world. So I always like to have two levels of intention, like an intention around why I'm taking the medicine, and the ways in which I want to grow, and then also an intention around for how I interact with the medicine in the space, so to stay grounded, to stay within my body or whatever. Maybe you don't want to be grounded, maybe you want to go to space. You can have two levels of intention. But then with ceremony, with ceremony being important, I think the wonderful thing about mushrooms is that for most of us and in our culture, we can reclaim our... it's something that we have evolved alongside since humans first became humans, and probably before then we've been eating mushrooms. I mean, even animals eat mushrooms. But especially from where we are in the world, hereditally, we've always been taking mushrooms, so we can claim how we want to interact with them. But I think things with like with ayahuasca and peyote and all the other plant medicines from around the world, I think it is really important to respect and preserve the culture and the lineage around these medicines, and that is a way that we can protect and preserve the people who provide these medicines, and maybe we'll go more into it later. It can be dangerous to maybe veer off and claim our own ways of interpreting these medicines, and they've lasted this long and been so powerful and transformative because they've been preserved and served in a very intentional way for such a long time. And it's wonderful also, with going back to the mushrooms, to be so intentional and respectful towards the medicine when we take it, because a wonderful thing about taking these plant medicines is how much it reconnects us back to our roots and our land. And in the UK we have lost 80% of our mushroom territories from being disconnected from the land, and so the wonderful thing about interacting with these plants is that it inspires us to preserve and protect the lands which they come from.
Thank you, Alexandra. I just wanted to read a quote from a herbalist called Antonio Estela Perez, who says, "The plants are so wise, they are our ancestors. They've been here and they're sacred. That humility and that continuous wonder, and the idea of being in a kinship relationship with them, saying, let me listen to what they have to say." And I think that's the idea that comes back as well with our connection to nature, and how we're, as you were saying, we're so disconnected in general from nature. And even when we think about mycelium, I guess, I don't know if everyone's heard of this, but mycelium, the idea that there are links between mushrooms, between all plants, I actually don't know that much about it. But I think it's kind of a mirror of the oneness, and we're going to talk about it more later, but just of us all together. So yeah, super nice to talk about that. Would you, I think also we were talking about, so let's say you have an amazing experience when you take mushrooms or plant medicine, why is it so important to integrate it afterwards, and how would you do that, and why? And we'll talk about microdosing afterwards, but I guess just in general, Alexandra, if you have any points, or how have you been integrating since it happened?
So, I think, well, the thing with the plant medicine, and I think we mentioned this before, is it's not just, quick, instant fix. You don't have one trip and then all your problems are sorted. It's just it's a wonderful tool or teacher to show you what your patterns are, ways in which we limit and restrict ourselves from being the fullest versions of ourselves that we can be. And a really important thing to remember is that it's, and a wonderful thing really is that, the journey never ends. Our, potential just, keeps on widening and widening in terms of growth. So, with integration and with taking these plants, it's not to get to just one end goal. The journey keeps on, it's a gift that keeps on giving.
Lifelong.
Yeah. Exactly. We are the universe. With the integration, so the plant medicine sort of shows you what your patterns are, and then afterwards it's your job, or my job, or all of our jobs, whether you're taking plant medicine or not, we can always be doing integration work. And something that was really important for me leading up to this most recent ceremony was preparing my body and my mind for the experience. And I felt, and I know this is true for everyone, that it was really important to be in nature and to be really in my body. So I practice a lot of embodiment work, which is, so when I'm teaching yoga, it's very, you could say, regimented, and left hand yellow, right hand green, doing the yoga moves. But often practicing on my own, it's I use a lot of visualization and moving with the sensations that I feel inside my body. And I think this can be a very powerful tool. Often when we take psychedelic medicine, you can fly to faraway places, so it can be very useful to experience the medicine from within your body. So yeah, lots of grounding practices are really important, and even the foods that we're ingesting. The indigenous often say that there are certain foods which are more palatable to the spirits, they believe, so that it can be interesting to research that. And then I found in the integration process it was quite useful for me to continue the same practices I was using to integrate. So there are so many different ones. Meditation, of course, is really important as well. But I found it was very helpful. And also, like, just as soon as I was preparing for the ceremony, or as soon as anyone prepares for a ceremony, like, that's when it begins, like, even before you take the medicine. And you start to see all your little mental patterns around, like, the fear around taking the medicine. Or whatever you fear you might experience, or whatever you're excited about. So using some of the things I used to prepare myself was then very useful to integrate. And also I found, for me, in that particular ayahuasca ceremony, there would be really beautiful chants that I did it with the Yawanawa, and they chanted throughout the ceremony. So now even just listening to the chants can help to take me back into that space and to reflect. And so I was trying to think how you could take that in if you were taking any form of psychedelic in your own intentional space, how you could do that. But I suppose you could play your own music, or maybe have a totem, or you could go back to the place where you did the ceremony to bring you back to it. And I'm just trying to think if there's anything else. And I think awareness is just really important. And you'll see the patterns. I also, during the ceremony, really prayed that I would remember, like, the most important things. I, like, prayed to the medicine, or asked the medicine, like, please help me remember this, because I'm going to need to remember it. And so far I have, which is great. And obviously writing about your experience is so important.
Thanks. Thank you, Alexandra. I think it's really interesting because when we're talking about, I guess, the whole idea of integration, and I was thinking about microdosing because I tried microdosing, so I did it for 3 months, 1 month on, 1 month off, and it was actually an amazing experience, but now I wonder if it's actually because of the mushrooms, or it's because I didn't drink during that whole month. I was meditating every day, journaling every day, really listening to myself, and I know there's quite a big hype around microdosing at the moment, and it can be amazing. But Milana, and I know you had your own experience, would you be happy to share about it, and also why maybe it's not for everyone?
Well, I actually think microdosing is a really, really good place for anyone to kind of dip their toes into the world of psychedelics. I don't think macrodoses are for everyone. But what you were saying about combining microdosing with meditation and all of these things, it's so important. It's so much a part of the microdosing protocol. And it's what's recommended. So setting intentions and then combining it with integration work. I'll talk really quickly about my microdosing experiences. So the first one was amazing. I had a very, very clear intention, and in order to receive, you have to believe, and that's really what happened. What I wanted came true, and I was very centered about it. There are 2 different ways of microdosing. Well, there are many more, but these are the 2 most famous. You've got the James Fadiman model, which is 1 day on, 2 days off for about 3 months, and it's a cyclical thing. So you do it when you have an intention and you want to address something in your life. And then you've got the Paul Stamets way of microdosing, which is 4 days on, taking, 3 days off. And that is more, it's combined with other supplements, functional mushrooms like lion's mane and niacin. And it's more as a supplementation, basically. So the first one I did the James Fadiman model, although I did more days microdosing than not. And that went very well. It's very subjective also. You kind of have to tweak it to what works for you. The second time was also very good. It was for focus, and I combined it with functional mushrooms. And then the third time, I have my boyfriend here to tell the story if anybody wants to check. But basically, my biggest mentor is a guy called Justin Townsend, and he's the head facilitator at the psilocybin retreat in Jamaica. And he told me that people don't really talk about the side effects of microdosing. And very, very common ones are irritability and neuroticism. Two things that I probably shouldn't have more of. And that really happened with the third cycle. And my boyfriend said to me one morning, he was like, Milana, something's not right. And then I knew there was time to stop. I think I had overdid it a little bit. I got too overexcited because the first two were so amazing. But that's the great thing about microdosing. Like, you can test it, you can see how it feels in your body, and if it doesn't feel good, you stop. And there's no harm in that, you know. But for some people I know that really struggle with some mental illnesses. Like, a friend of mine has very bad ADHD, and instead of taking Ritalin, she started microdosing for a year, and it worked incredibly for her. And I just think there's no harm in trying. So if it's hype or not, it doesn't really matter. Like, another conversation is placebo or not placebo, but if it works, then who cares?
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. I think we're quite lucky as well, in a way, to have the education, or even to have people around us talking about it. And one thing that we wanted to touch upon, and again, this is a huge subject, but it's that idea of privilege and how, well, we are very privileged, as I said, to be able to be educated about it and to have access to it. And also, I think it's important, and as you say, Milana, your friend who had ADHD, and he took it, and how, instead of taking Ritalin, and how often, and I think it ties back into the waves that we've lived through, and people, or governments, or I guess lobbying, has pushed down the benefits, because potentially there are other benefits, economical, for example, that they can have. Alex, are you happy to just touch upon that? Because I know that's something that we spoke about, just that idea of within, and we've talked about it in other talks as well, the idea of often knowing ourselves better and exploring ourselves through natural ways is often discouraged by certain power structures that we live in. And would you be happy to talk about that a bit?
Yeah, I'll try and give a brief because it's a really big topic. But yeah, it sucks because basically the way that the way that the medical industry works is that it's an industry, it's the biggest money-making industry in the world, and in order to make money, in order for one company to make, a lot of you probably already know this, in order for one company to make money from a product, they have to be able to patent it, to own it, and you can't patent a plant. So these big pharmaceutical companies aren't interested in natural medicine and plant medicine, which means they're not paying for these natural medicines to go to trial, which means that these natural medicines can never be proven to be safe or effective. And if they can't be proven to be safe and effective, they can't be used in the medical industry or even sold or maybe even legally consumed by people. So that's the catch-22 of the medical industry, which means that access is highly restricted. And then a lot of people think, and it's probably true, that the pharmaceutical industry actually doesn't want people to get better. Like Milana mentioned earlier, plant medicine, especially psychedelic medicine, because most illness is rooted in some kind of trauma or mental limitation, heals illness at the root. And it's like killing the goose that laid the golden eggs, my mum always says. If people heal their illnesses at the root cause, then there'd be no need to buy pharmaceutical medicines, and so our access is highly restricted. And there's other power structures at play as well, which means our access is restricted, but that's the biggest way, the main way.
There's a lot of I mean, we've literally just touched upon it very quickly, but there are so many resources and people doing that work.
I just want to say something about the patterns and natural medicine. Not that I know that much about it, to be very honest, but this is a big topic in psychedelics right now, and it is that companies are patenting natural medicine. So, for example, in England, you've got a company called Compass Pathways that are... Very good. I mean, but they're trying to patent psilocybin. But it's not all of psilocybin, obviously, because how can you patent all of psilocybin? But it's a certain strain. But yeah, I mean, they're now figuring out laws of how to avoid one company holding the patent for a natural plant, because obviously that could then end in a disaster. But there are fights happening about patents right now within natural medicine, which is crazy as well. So yeah, sorry, that was just...
Yeah, that is interesting. And also I think the idea of that giving someone not one pill, but one mushroom could potentially heal them, have that experience that heals them, as opposed to giving them a pill every month that costs money, is also part of that whole like long-term healing. How can we keep people in and needing our product? The last question I wanted to ask, because this is also something we talked about, because I think we've been on our own personal journeys, and it can be very me-centric, so it can be very much, what journey am I going to have? How am I going to heal? And I came across this beautiful quote from Sophie Strand, who's an author and a researcher and a thinker in this field. And she says, we need to think beyond the impoverished idea of merely awakening. What does it mean to be medicinal to your ecosystem? If the fungi, cacti, eco-deli beings teach us anything, it is to stop taking so much, to stop always extracting medicine, and instead to start asking yourself how to be the healing agent. And when we spoke about this, and I don't know if you know Maslow's hierarchy of needs, there are different levels, but basically how humans evolve, I guess, in a way. And the top one, the 7th level, is self-actualization. But actually there was an 8th level, which is transcendence and helping others and going out towards others. And that's really sort of what we should be aiming for. And yeah, Milana, we spoke about, obviously, again, it's a huge subject. But why is this important, I think, to maybe, and how does plant medicine show this to us, the idea of turning towards others? And
yeah, so this question came out of a conversation that we had, I think it was the first conversation that we had, where I said to Ophélie that the more that I do psychedelics and the more high macrodose experiences that I've had, and so from my own experience and many people around me, I've realized that doing too many high dose psychedelic experiences in a short period of time actually has an adverse effect. So one becomes very self-obsessed in a way, because it's all about me, and there's only so much that you can discover at a certain moment in time, right? And at the same time, it takes away a bit of the magic of the whole experience, which also means that the effect is not as strong. And so what I've realized is that the best way to help yourself and to heal yourself and fulfill yourself is actually looking more outward and helping others in order to help yourself. So that's what I've realized, and also that ties into the way that indigenous communities use plants, because it's much more about relational healing and community healing, and that's also very present in ceremonial use. I mean, now I'm saying ceremonial, not my favorite word, but it's true, and there's a point to that. Like, community heals more than what you can heal by yourself.
maybe that's why it's good to go out and party and take mushrooms.
There you go.
With your friends.
That's what I'm thinking.
Do some on your own and then some out with all your friends. Thank you. Do you want to add anything, Alex, about this? Well, thank you so much, both of you. We're gonna open to questions. If anyone has any questions.
Yeah, I have a question. Hello. I was gonna say, when you're talking about the microdosing, you said that there's a time where you could feel a little bit of irritability, etc., coming in and coming on. I don't know if you've tried meditation or transcendental meditation, but a lot of the time when the irritability comes on, it's because you have to work through that first in order to get through to the second realm. And I think that's what happens when you're microdosing mushrooms as well. Like, you're just facing the first things that you need to go through first before you actually reach over to the other side. So that irritability is not necessarily a bad thing. It's like a necessary evil is not the right word, but a necessary challenge to overcome. So yeah, it's not necessarily a question, it's just more of a point of information.
Thank you.
No, sorry, can I just answer to this, because you're so right. And in fact, so I'm reading a book, I just finished it, it's called Mastering Microdosing. For anybody that's interested in microdosing, I really, really recommend it. And so the author I've met, and I texted him this, I said, I was so irritable the last time, and he said to me, yeah, but Milana, did you do it with a therapist together? And I said, no, I didn't. And he said, these things will come up, like you will be confronted with things about your character that are anyway there, and it just brings them up stronger. So it just makes you aware of what you need to work on. And I gave up, and I guess am I still irritable? It's better, I think.
Remember the question they like to ask?
Up there to masculine. Yeah. Can you talk about how that's different from the other?
Okay, so I had quite an incredible experience. I went with my boyfriend. We went to Virikuta, which is where mescaline and the peyote cactus come from. And they say that's where the world was created as well. So there's a whole other legend around the place. But we went and when we ate peyote in the desert, we cut it and we ate it, full of dirt and all of that. It was the most acidic thing I've ever eaten in my life. And physically, I thought it was a very difficult experience, tough on the stomach and all of that. But spiritually and as a psychedelic, it was one of the most incredible experiences I've ever had in my life. It's, again, I find it so difficult to describe psychedelic experiences, but it really, because I did it with someone together, it really made me hone in on my partner. And they say, especially with peyote, if you do it with a partner, you come out either extremely strong or you never want to see each other ever again. Because you see into each other. But yeah, so that was the experience. It was only one time, but it's the grandfather of all psychedelics. And I felt that very masculine, kind of tough energy, but beautiful at the same time.
I actually had experiences with mescaline, which is actually the only plant medicine that I've done very intentionally. And there was a couple who was there, and they broke up afterwards. Actually, I found out a few weeks later. So yeah, it was so I can confirm it does happen. I was thinking, Alexandra, would you be happy to share the story of the Christmas story?
I love this story. I just heard it this most recent Christmas. And yeah, it's the original story. Apparently this is where Christmas originated from. I'm sure there's a lot of them around, but this one makes a lot of sense. So in Lapland, where they have the Sami people, when they got close to the winter solstice, they would gather their Amanita muscara mushrooms, so like the emoji toadstool mushrooms. And they would often use reindeer to find them, because reindeer love eating Amanita muscaras. So that is maybe where Rudolph and his red nose came from, because they would sniff out the mushrooms. People would gather these mushrooms and then string them up outside their homes to dry. So it's a bit like the red bulbils on the trees. And so they would preserve these mushrooms, and then when it came to the winter solstice, usually people were completely snowed in, and the local shaman would come, and reindeer also eat the mushrooms, and sometimes they would gather the reindeer pee. And then the local shaman would come to each home around the time of the winter solstice, so the longest night of the year, so the longest amount of darkness, which is supposed to be a time of like deep introspection and journeying within into your soul. And often because people were snowed in, this big man with a big white beard and long white hair, rolling high on mushrooms, would jump down your chimney and then facilitate a mushroom trip with you and your family from the mushrooms that you dried or from the reindeer pee that he had from his reindeers. And this would be the gift of Christmas. It would be the discovering the light within and discovering, I've found each ceremony and trip has shown me my own inner gifts, and that was the original gift of Christmas.
It's a great story when you told it to me. Does anyone else have a question? Yeah, I can tell it.
So you might not know the answer to this, but I was wondering why some religions are so against psychedelics. So more like Abrahamic religions, I'd say, or like I was Muslim, so I was wondering why. I never really researched into it, but you know the answer to that.
God, that's a big question. I think because it's threatening to their power. That's the only thing that I can guess. Because, that's really what it does. It deconstructs pre-existing belief systems. And I think it's too threatening. I don't really know. I think there are a few books written up on religion and psychedelics, and it's definitely a topic I want to go more into, but that would be my guess. Yeah.
I would say, I think that, mushrooms encourage people, and all psychedelics, encourage you to connect with God or a divinity or a higher power from within, and empower you to have your own direct relationship with God or divinity, which is such a threat for religion, which often wants you to go through like a mediator, through to externalize your power. And I think that's why psychedelics are such a threat to all power systems, as you were saying. Like, that's why the government doesn't like them. And maybe from government and religion's perspective, people who align very much with or people not who align with that, but people who are in charge and control these power structures maybe just see this as making people being unpredictable and frightening and not useful to the construct. But it empowers people to have this inner connection, and then it removes the need for religion.
Yeah, there's actually also like quite a funny story in that domain. Actually, there's another cactus that produces mescaline called the Echinopsis pacoi, and originally the conquistadores arrived, I think it was in Mexico, and they tried to ban it and really eliminate it, and then I think one of the conquistadores took it and liked it so much that they called it the San Pedro, which is Saint Peter, which is one of the holiest saints in religion, and so actually got it semi-accepted thanks to that, which is quite an interesting story where they tried to use religion to help it be okay and not destroy it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I wonder what the church thinks of San Pedro now.
Any more questions? Yes.
Question.
Yes.
This is going to be classic me, but could mushrooms ever be bad for you? Could they do any harm?
Depends how you take them.
Depends
Yeah.
if you're partying every weekend.
No. Is it if you took
As
them,
in for your liver?
yeah,
or-
for your body? Is there ever an instance where it could be
think
bad for you? Do they have any?
The truth is that we haven't had enough trials for a long period of time to really test the long-term effects on the body. I do think that there must be some sort of effect in the liver, and especially if you combine it with alcohol, it can have specifically on the liver, bad. It can be bad. Yeah.
It's already killed the vibe.
No, but it's important. It's an important question. Absolutely, I think about that too. Like everyone's microdosing, but nobody really knows like what the long-term consequences are.
You, which is, I wanted to know, and I've always tried to research this, but because most of the trials on psychedelic mushrooms have been on their psychological benefits, do we know if they have any physiological benefits, psychedelic mushrooms?
They do. I'll give you the microphone in a second, but yeah, they're great for pain. Actually, I had a very interesting Zoom with 2 female founders that are doing a microdosing company specifically for women for hormonal health and all like menstrual cramps and pains that go along with that. Yeah. So yeah, absolutely, there are. It can help physical ailments. Yeah.
That's so interesting. Also, because we were talking about how mushrooms have, such feminine energy. So it's interesting that they help with reproductive issues, and because mushrooms usually sprout up at full moons as well. So tonight there'll hopefully lots of chanterelles coming out because there's been a lot of rain. But yeah, so that's interesting how they have an affinity with the feminine reproductive system.
Mushrooms and all plants and nature. I mean, nature is feminine, and these women were telling me, and I'll never forget it, but they I'm kind of crazy that I didn't think about it before, but they were talking about, who is the medicine giver in a family. Like, if you've got a cold, who do you go to, your father or your mother? Like, it's always the mother. We have the remedies, and it is a very feminine act to care like that, the motherly act. And so I think it's important to nurture the female energy within this industry, especially because it's so male dominated. So it's good to have more women join and be present. It's so important for this not to get corrupted.
Just a little question. Moving away from the medical uses of mushrooms, I think Milana has possibly spoken to somebody about the uses of it for design and product making, and I was just wondering if you had any knowledge or insight into that, and what you thought the potential was for it, for mycelium and using it for building and construction. Big question, but I remember you
It's huge. Yeah. There's a company called Evocative, and they have started doing not only building blocks from mycelium, which is, construction is such a pollutant. It would change the game so much if we could introduce that into that industry, but also packaging. They're creating mycelium packaging. So all of the Amazon packaging, and IKEA actually just also said that they're interested in changing their packaging to mycelium. So yeah, that would have tremendous effects. And also you can make material. There's a lot of mycelium leather, and yeah, this industry is gonna grow a lot. More interest is going into mushrooms specifically, to also use them to save the world in a way.
Plastic eating mushrooms.
Plastic eating mushrooms, all of the things. They're the best, honestly.
They're the best.
Can you speak a bit more about your platform and what you do exactly?
Yeah. It's a bit confusing, I know. But basically, so at its center, it's educational. That's why I created it, because I myself I'm so interested in this topic, and I wanted to learn more about it and basically share everything that I was learning. And at the time, it was right after the pandemic, mental illness rose significantly, and there was a lot of false information circulating. And so I was looking, obviously doing a lot of research, and there was not a platform that was visually appealing to me that had all of this information combined. So at its center, it's educational, but a big part of it is also about integration work. So breath work, meditation, kundalini, where I try to give free courses for people to practice. Because the truth is, I believe that psychedelics are a window and they can be amazing, and they've been amazing in my life, but I don't think they're for everyone, and it's also not what's going to create lasting change. Like, discipline is key in life. So integration work is the most important thing. And also, if you manage to, because everything is within, no? And if you manage to bring that out naturally, like, the high is greater than you will ever have from a plant, I think, when you realize the power that you have. And then, sorry, the last point is it's also very centered around cultural happenings with psychedelics. So psychedelics in film, art, architecture, music, and my take on what that is.
And it's a directory as
And
well.
it's a directory as well. Sorry, there are many sections, but that was also really important, to be a bridge between people that want alternative healing options and facilitators that do it in a very, very serious and safe way. So yeah, that was also a main purpose that I'm slowly building. But yeah. Funga.
I'll share everything. Afterwards, I'll make sure that I share with everyone all the information. Is there one thing that you want, because obviously we've touched on so many different things and we've really opened lots of doors. Is there one thing that you want to, like, last thing, if you had you wanted everyone to go away with one thing, what would it be? Both.
I think, I would just love to break down this barrier that has somehow grown between us and nature, and to hopefully just remove the sting of fear a little bit around plant medicine, whether it be psychedelic or even just herbal medicine. We've been so conditioned to separate ourselves from these things that we've evolved alongside for thousands of years, and we've got this far with these medicines, and a lot of, psychological development as humans is often accredited to plant medicine. So there's an incredible video with, what's the name of that guy who's done the recent Netflix thing? I sent you guys the video.
Michael Pollan? No.
No, I sent you the video of the guy, Graham Hancock. Graham Hancock. This amazing video about it's a banned TED talk about a war on consciousness, and in it he talks about how we could be missing out on the next phase of our evolution if we continue to separate ourselves from nature and these plant medicines. So yeah, that's my message to y'all.
I haven't spoken about gratitude, but for me, that's the most important thing that surrounds psychedelics and what they can give to you. Gratitude is the first of the higher frequencies, and to quote Joe Dispenza, if you live in gratitude, you live in receiving, in the receiving. So in order to receive, you have to be grateful, and if you're in that frequency, more of those things will come into your life. And I think that's really something that I live by, that I think is the most important thing, and the key to a happy life, truly, just to be grateful and to be the creator of your own reality, because we all are. And whatever you desire, if you put your mind and your heart to it, it can happen.
Thank you. Well, I'm so grateful for both of you being here tonight, so thank you so much. Thank you all for coming as well. It's been super nice to share this with you. As I said, we have touched on a lot of topics, and I'll send out an email with more resources if you feel inclined to go deeper into one of them. But I hope that this maybe has inspired you to have a more conscious relationship with yourself and to plants and to Tamlin, beautiful doggy. And yeah, so I'll also share Milana and Alex's contacts and Instagram so you can follow them, because they have a lot of beautiful wisdom to share. And I wanted to say thank you, lastly, to Rebecca for opening your beautiful home to us. Thank you so much. And also, she's an amazing designer. She made this top, and she makes beautiful tops, so definitely check it out. And thank you to Eliza for helping me organise. I really appreciate you. Thank you to Clem for filming, and to Anthony for the speakers, and also to the Salad Project who made the amazing salads. Just shout out to them. And thank you again to you both, and thank you to you all for coming. So thank you. And please, I think there's some more to drink and to eat, so please stay and hang out and chat.
I also just wanted to say, if anyone... I'm doing a retreat in September. It's a quick plug. And there's an incredible facilitator called Frank Rana Jose, who's an amazing sound healer. I'll be doing the yoga and leading a few rituals. It's very nature-centered. It's beautiful castle in Scotland called Buckhill. But one of the days will be very much focused on this incredible sound ceremony where everyone will be offered a therapeutic dose of mushrooms, and Frank will be facilitating. So if anyone's interested in participating in using the C word in the ceremony, then yeah.
When is it?
It's on, thank you. It's on the 14th till the 17th of September, and details about it are on my Instagram.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for having us.